First of all, I was a kid, and some of you were teaching in this district, and so I don't think I know it all by giving this presentation. I just have come across this information through some trainings this summer, and I saw an opportunity to talk about the synthesis between the two, and I think it can really help all of us. But these are not the only ideas in music. They may spark an idea like, oh, I do this, it's slightly different than that, but I like this better, you might try this. So this should be a session where we all share our expertise and our tips and tricks and things. But now let's start the Tessrpspssp, technique enhancing strategies from Suzuki and Rolland for the private studio and public school string programs. Tessrpspssp. I should mention that one of the professionals at the Rolland workshop I went to online was Joe Fishbach, and he has a tendency to do the same thing. He makes his own made-up acronyms that are kind of silly and funny. So I'll tell you my introduction paragraph, and then we'll get to playing. And so Shinichi Suzuki and Paul Rolland developed philosophies of string music education. They emphasized a very high-quality music instruction at a very young age. A strong relationship between the teacher, the parent, and the student in the shape of a triangle, and an emphasis on the natural motion and natural routines of learning. Suzuki's considered a method that's rooted deeply in learning by ear, mastery through repetition and review, and while Rolland is more of a pedagogical framework, emphasizing a natural, static tension-free playing that emphasizes quality repetitions of string playing actions towards the idea of automaticity. Using the framework of a typical year of instruction for a first-year beginner, I'm going to attempt to share these strategies from two sources to help us enrich our studios, public and private. For now, you should leave your bow down, okay? So we're first going to start with what's called a play order. This comes from Suzuki. In fact, you should probably put your instrument in a safe place. So the play order starts like this. It's a great thing to start the beginning of your year. I like to use it to learn the kids' names. So the rules of the play order are, I can only stand up if I say someone else's name. You may not say the name of someone who is next to you, and we say everyone's name until it's all done. All right? So think about the person's name that you might say, person who is not next to you. I will start. Marjorie. And when you say a name, you get to stand.
Tammy. Chrissy. Victor.
Katie.
Ashley. Via.
Denise.
All right, now we're going to sit down once we say a name. We're trying to go faster, but it's going to be the same order. Okay? Same order as just before. Marjorie.
Tammy. Chrissy. Victor.
Katie.
Ashley. Leah.
Denise.
Great. Let's see if we can do it even faster. Ready? Marjorie.
Tammy. Chrissy. Victor.
Katie.
Ashley. Leah.
Denise.
And you're the last person. You're the last person. That's just a bummer. You're the last person. You can say Mr. T. Whatever. Okay, as fast as we can. All right, Marjorie.
Tammy. Chrissy. Victor.
Katie.
Ashley. Leah.
Leah.
Now, what have we just practiced a whole bunch of?
Names, and then you also got to move.
Names. We've moved.
And left.
Humor.
And we're
Oh,
and standing at the
We've
seat.
risen and we've fallen.
Yes.
In my classes, I like to use a code word, dinosaur, which means when you hear that word, you stand up as fast as you can. So all of a sudden I'll be talking, I'll say, dinosaur. Everybody has to stand up as fast as can be. Just my code word, it's just what I like. Okay. So that's the play order. We are going to come back to that. So try to remember the same play order we just had. Okay, now let's pick up our violins or violas or cellos or basses, please. Just the instrument, not the bow yet. All right, so with our left hand in sort of a guitar position, what some teachers call the banjo position, we're going to start by just tapping our left hand on the bout of the instrument. For cellos and basses, yeah, just right there. And I don't mind so much that arms are resting on day one, but after a while I'll start to encourage students to have a C shape in the cello bass community so that they're not resting arms on the side of the instrument. And now I might do you play, I play, you play. And some students notice that I use different fingers, some don't. Change up the rhythm with time. And what you've already done here, of course, is you've shaped the left hand on your instrument. And it's got a nice shape to it, it's got a nice line from elbow to knuckle, and you don't have to talk about it. You just have them tap. And now they're starting the beginning of that motion. Got fingers coming to the string, but also a vibrato motion, and also engaging and working the muscles of the left arm. Okay, we can also do this away from the instrument. So holding the instrument under our paw here, bring your left hand for violin and viola players to the collarbone. So you might be feeling around, each student has to figure out what their physiology is, and just tap here, any finger. You might start directing the finger over time, just to the collarbone. And this was a big deal in the Rolland workshop. They talked a lot about how this is a sort of a direct line, and then if you start to notice that kids are just using the fingers or just the wrist, encourage more motion from the elbow and the shoulder, and you might even do longer travels. Now you're practicing shifting motions, right? And maybe tap on the head, tap in a different place, tap on a knee. I like these from when Louisa took over.
Oh, yeah.
She had some tap on different parts of your body during the rests. For cellos, tapping on the collarbone is still helpful, and I think to a degree for the bass player. So I'd still ask the cello bass player to do on the collarbones. All right, where else do we want to tap? Especially for cello players, bass players, tapping on the sternum, so we really know where that is. Violin and viola players, you can take a break or just tap on your head, I guess. But tapping on the sternum, tapping on the belly, feeling the difference between that part. We don't want the cello or bass to be sitting here. We want the cello in the harder part of our sternum. And again, you can add rhythms to this if you're especially liking rhythm in your day. You can add words to that, of course, and like good D, stop, or this is the part of the Rolland beginning where he might take student names and create student name rhythms. So Andrew Travers, Leo Bo, and so on. Okay? All right, so that's tapping. And we've got the first tuning that the Rolland school talks about is guitar tuning, which is with the thumb. So as a violin player, you curl your 1, 2, 3, 4 of the right hand, and you pluck with the thumb. And so you just have everybody do the same string, or you do one kid at a time. Now for a cello player, you have to teach the cello player what to do. So I still do thumb on the side of the fingerboard. Cello players play with first finger. This is just for tuning, just getting them used to the string. Let's try D string. G string. And let's make it a little slower. Now let's switch to the left hand. And any finger at first with the left hand. For a bass player, you might decide to stay with the right hand.
Okay.
Michael Fernelli talked a lot about how it's a little bit too much of a stress for a bass player, especially to plug in the first position place. So maybe telling a bass player to be in the midpoint with the left hand plucks, because it's just harder to grab that string. All right, so now let's try strumming all the strings with the left hand. Let's see if we can really make it through the pinky first. We'll aim for the pinky. If other fingers hit it, no big deal. Now as we go, I've actually not gotten to this step yet of teaching kids how to get it up here. But this is one way to help make sure that your left hand is a really good shape to it as you bring it up to jaw position. And then we can speed it up. It's a really great sound because you're making all of this sound in the room, and the kids are really enjoying the group group sound interval. And what have we done for our left arm? We've really shaped this shape. It's very strong right now. It's the way you want it to look. And it's, you haven't had to talk about don't bend your wrist or do bend your wrist or
No
don't have a
pancakes.
dead bird, no pancakes. You don't have to talk about it. The pizzicato motion just makes it happen. So we've got the instrument tuned by pizzicato. That's a, kind of a new one for me because I'll always want to pick up the bow and make sure that string sounds just perfect, you know, but you don't always have that much time. And of course, when you're starting off your first lessons, tuning just 2 strings is a great way to save time. Instead of tuning all 4 strings, just the A and the D that you need. If that doesn't bother you too much, I mean, for some people like me, I have to suspend my desire to make it all perfect. Let's go on to the most beautiful sound in the world, sound of 1-string pizzicato. So right now, this is kind of like an exploration. So if you would explore your instrument, try to find the most beautiful sound with a pizzicato that you can. And I'd like to relate this to what Jason said about making the sound start on your bass. You have to load in some pressure into the string in order to make that happen. And I draw students' attention to what it looks like when the string vibrates back and forth. And that this kind of magic is the same thing you want to see when you're drawing the bow across the string in the future. So right now you can play the most beautiful sounds in the world on your instrument. So this is a fun game. This comes from Tove Rosenberg and a Suzuki teacher. You take something, let's just hide this. So you have a student that you send out of the room, and you hide something. And if you know this game, you hide something, and everybody else in the room knows it, right? But the kid that you sent out of the room doesn't. And then you say that kid has to find it. So the first time you do this thing, maybe the teacher's playing. Sure. So maybe the teacher's playing. Whatever the tune is, and the teacher plays louder or softer. Louder or softer, faster or slower. As the ear gets going, you can have other things that you can change, such as in tune or out of tune. Start playing terribly out of tune with the students off they'll know right away, right? And then, once you have some common repertoire that the other kids know, the students can start to join in the game. And so that's a nice way to break it up. It also helps you review whatever music you're doing while you're doing this silly game, but it's still, I mean, think about what it's asking your students to do. They have to tune themselves into the sound of things, especially if they're a kid in the hot seat, so to speak. But the other students have to adjust their playing to fill the role of the game. Okay, now, if you put your bow and your instrument down, and if you would find your case and make sure all the latches are latched, the zippers are zipped. And if you're a bass player or a cello player, if you could fold your case into a manageable package, get it in your paws. I got it. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So now you can introduce 3, 4 times. 1, 2. You might try standing still, doing some other like bench press, behind your head, in front, and then back to your chair. And I like to introduce, bring in other kinds of music, especially Little Richard. It just seems to get people moving. One of the neatest things, I think, in one of the first presentations we got was how bringing your instrument from above your head to position, rather than bringing your instrument up from below, is a different engagement of muscles. And they talk quite a bit about the trapezius, the big triangular muscle across the back tip to tip shoulder, and down almost to the bottom of our spine. If you try that, and just bring, as if you're about to play violin or viola, bring all your hands up, and then to here. And feel how light and easy that feels, and then shake it out. We'll sort of try to reset, and then bring it up from here, and how much heavier these arms feel. Because now it's just arm muscles that are engaging here. Whereas when we start from above, now we've engaged the back muscles and the arm muscles. And this is one of the major principles of the Rolland approach, is that it's not just one muscle, this muscle, that muscle, it's all of our muscles working to play the violin or the viola. Okay, thanks for getting sweaty with me there. What else did I want to say? Okay, cool. Hands and mouth.
That's where I
Great.
do the helicopter
Helicopter?
and the
Oh,
landing
yeah.
pad, the other helicopter. The landing pad. We all go make helicopter sounds.
Well, that's a really cute, I like that. I like to go like helicopter. Are you a helicopter or are you a hummingbird? Like, which do you prefer? Do you not like the idea of the violence of an attack helicopter? You know? Or do you prefer hummingbirds like my grandma did? Okay, if you pick up your instrument, please. Now this next thing, if you're a Suzuki person, you'll recognize is the parts of the instrument song. Okay, so what I'd like to start with is to make it a scale. We'll start with the D string. Teacher sings, "What is this?" Students respond on the same pitch. This is, and then we point to the thing we're talking about. So, what is this? This is the bridge. And of course, the first time they don't know, so it's gonna be this is the, I don't know, you know. And what I like to do is sort of sneak it in. What is this? The bridge. This is the bridge. What are these pegs? These are the pegs. What is this? The scroll. This is the scroll. What is this? The chin rest. This is the chin rest. What is this?
This is the
What are these?
These are the monitors.
I probably chose the wrong key, sorry. What is this? And what's in here? Okay, and then you can go down the instrument, and with the parts of the instrument, that gets you 15 parts of the instrument. So there's probably a couple left over, and I always ask, you know, what did we skip? What didn't we talk about? Usually it's the sound post inside, or there's, you know, something in there. Okay, so that's how parts of the instrument can work. Now, you don't have to do it on a scale. You could do it on something else. There's also variations I like where, what is this? This is the thing. What is this? And then that gets things moving a little quicker, and they can start to see a scale motion a little better. Of course, you could do arpeggios. What is this? You can do Gordon patterns. This is a D do. Did anyone get trained on Gordon patterns when they're younger person? So it's a really easy. It's just a very simple 1-5 progression, basically, where you are just outlining the arpeggios that would relate to a certain key. Really great for getting pitch center, getting centered pitch in the students too. Gordon patterns, Gordon. They made us train it until we could sing it in our sleep at the University of Connecticut. This is from Rolland. Perhaps you've heard of the Statue of Liberty thing. We all kind of do that, I think, when we're setting up violin. No? Okay, so students standing up. This is for violin, viola only, obviously. I'll talk about cellos and basses in a second. But first of all, left hand on the shoulder of the instrument, right hand on the button. So Rolland called this the throat. That really bothers me. I don't like the idea of anyone's hand around anyone else's throat. So I call it the horn or the neck. And they would maybe do this multiple times, you know, looking at their reflection. I make a big deal of like looking at my reflection, making sure I'm pretty, and then turning that upside down. And again, notice the idea that we're above our heads here, pointing the end button at the throat, and then bringing it in. Now, in a moment we'll have probably a big discussion about chin rests and shoulder rests and things. But then finding that place where it feels good, and then making whatever adjustments are necessary, teacher coming around to help with adjustments, because you'll end up with a kid over here, and the kid trying this thing out. I love this when this happens. Or, no, Johnny. And finding it there. And doing that multiple times in a class period. Okay, let's try it again. And one thing that my Suzuki training says to me is also the feet open up. So even before this has started, we've also talked about how the feet need to be, how the knees must bend while we're standing, and we get this shape going on. For a cello player, if we can, we want to see if we can get hips above the knees when they're seated. If you'd like to sit, that's fine, go right ahead. Not always easy or possible with the chairs we have in our rooms. I have folding metal chairs in most of my rooms. I don't even have nice wingers like this here where we have a relatively flat surface. So however you can accommodate that in your classrooms, I think is pretty important for a cello player. We definitely don't want the knees above where the hips are, because that can be really hard for setting that up. The feet form a triangle with where the end pin goes, but somewhere around there. Usually a fairly shallow triangle. You know, it's not like a right angle triangle. And the bear hug test, we talked about that already. For bass, it's the same thing we talked about with the big setup there. Just find the right end pin length so that the fingers hit that bridge. Now we'll do stop and go. So this comes from Carol Tarr, Suzuki teacher. The stop and go is when you have an activity going that everybody knows. So maybe it's a piece of music. Let's just choose Twinkle Twinkle as an example. So let me explain it and we'll try it out together. So the stop part is the teacher says stop, everybody freezes. Teacher taps someone on the shoulder. Come on in, it's all good.
Sorry.
No worries. Teacher taps someone on the shoulder, they become the soloist. They play until the teacher says go, then everybody joins back in. Okay? We haven't introduced the bow yet, but let's just pretend that we know how to use the bow for this activity. Let's play Twinkle Twinkle, key of D. Check in with certain individuals too, and be able to play. Once you get that routine built in, it can start to be a kind of a normal thing. Stop and go. And the next one is going to be right hand pizzicato ellipses. This comes from Rolland, and this was supposed to build not only the arm muscles that would help with being able to perform a pizzicato, but also the arm muscles that execute a straight bow. So the idea you're going to demonstrate for your students is the most relaxed, circular, like synchronized swimming, like you're moving underwater. And this can be set to music, and Rolland would use it quite a bit, set to music. So let's do this. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So you might set up a metronome if you prefer, or you can have a drum machine, or you can have a particular track of music where D sounds good with it, or A, or whatever string you choose. Let's double it now. So now our arm should move faster, but it also should move in a slower circle. Let's move faster. Still trying to make little circles. If you miss the string, it's okay. You get it more than one string, not a big deal. What we're really trying to do is the shape of the finger. Let's do slower. 2. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And I think there's a lot of fun you can have with this. You can have kids count 1 and 3. So count 1, 3. So everybody, 1. And then teacher does 2, 4, 2. Switch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pizzicato should still be on 1 and 3. It's okay. That's fun. And that's funny how that can switch, right?
4.
Alright. Now, how many times have we done this motion? Enough to be a bit tired, right? And how tired are students going to be, you know, picking up that bow for the first time? But how much stronger will it be if they've done this a lot? And you can do that on all the strings. Don't just do it on D string. Let's do 2 plucks. Let's do half notes, 2 plucks, and we'll start with the lowest string in the orchestra. We'll go E, then C's, and then G, D, A, E's. So we'll do 2 plucks per string. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. C stringers. 1, 2, 3. G stringers. 1, 2. D stringers. 2. A stringers. 2. E stringers. Skinny E string. Whoops. All right, double time. A stringers. D stringers. G stringers. C stringers. Big E stringers. There you go. And so there's a way to get over the strings. You may not even have to say the string. You may just play the string and kids can start matching. So I know that a lot of kids will panic and go, which string is that? Which string? Does it sound like this one? Sometimes that's a conversation. Next, ant song. Ant song comes from Suzuki, and there's a lot of different versions of the words. One of the old versions of the words for the C string said China. We've definitely changed that in the Suzuki community. We don't use that anymore, especially because of the history of Chinese Americans and their exploitation on the railroad in the United States. So the words that I like to use are, let's see if I can get my voice up there, every, and that's the kid part. Today there were some ants, digging in the dirt, going underground, carrying their cellos and basses and violins and violas. And you want to get everybody in there, right? You don't want to leave anyone out. Now it's a little complicated to do because you have to teach the kids the weight. So that's my biggest challenge in doing the ant song with a heterogeneous group of instruments, is that you have those 5 strings and cello and viola players have to wait for one measure. And at the end, bass players and violin players can't play for one measure, you know. So let's go ahead and give that a try. You guys play what I tell kids is you play the repeated notes. So listen to me again, you know, I play the song through. Which ones are the repeated notes? Every. Ants, dirt, ground, cello. Okay? So E stringers, get ready, in basses included. I don't do a low E, high E difference here. Ready, and every, there are some ants, digging in the dirt. I'll play with the bow usually. That's the ant song. That's one of the first songs we do.
And we do that for our first concert.
And it's a great first
I
concert
just
piece.
put the words on the smartboard, and then the
Are
3
there
words
words-
that they say are like bold, and I play the piano. But I like how you played the bow with it.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it makes the scale, you know, now they're hearing scales,
Yeah.
little pentascale.
Yeah.
So would that song be on YouTube somewhere? Or if you're not a
It's
Suzuki person
Um,
and don't know these little tricks?
I'm sure ant song is out there somewhere. It's pretty common in the Suzuki community. And
So
the
why-
words tend to change based on the instrument. You know, for cello, we started on A string in private studio teaching, so it always started with ants instead of every.
On Facebook, there's a few orchestra director pages. You can probably find almost every version of that song somewhere on there too.
Are there different ways to do that song too? I introduced it for the first time last year, And instead of doing the scale thing, I had them bow or pluck the ants, digging in. And you do it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Because then they were thinking about and then it was China, whatever the word was.
Oh, that's good, because that would give them
Because
something to do.
I didn't know that's how you're supposed to do it, how you just did it. That was all new to me. So I'm like, oh, well, let's do it this way. Does that work? I mean,
Both of those work
Okay.
great. I think it's fun. Because then what I like about
Check,
that
check,
idea is that it gives the kids something to do when it's not their part,
yeah.
but it's not as complicated as playing a tetrachord on day 3 of playing the instrument. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's smart.
That's how they kind of got it, and then we kind of just stopped doing because we got busy with some other things. But it was because then it helped them memorize I think their string order, sort of. But
Yeah. I wonder if we should make up a song that goes the reverse way. I never even thought about doing that, because knowing it from the skinny string to the thick string is one thing, and then picking the string out from like what string is your second string, what string is this string. Or one thing I like to do is Beethoven says, put your finger on the E string. Beethoven says, like a Simon Says game. But then you can check everybody's finger and make sure it's in the right place at the right time. And kids want to be quick with it, so they find it quick, and if they look around at the neighbor, which is great, you want them looking around the orchestra. Violin viola setup. I actually got a new case. Very excited about it. The reason I had to get a new case is I got a new jaw rest, and this is a Max case. You don't just use this case. You strap in and feel the genius. It's to the max. Anyhow, so I got a super tall Whitner adjustable. It's actually a viola rest, and it's meant to go in the center, but I still like it on the side. And the Rolland folk, many of them had shoulder rests, by the way, so it wasn't like it was prohibited. But many of the Rolland folk grew up being told to put the instrument on the collarbone and having a taller, better jaw rest situation, chin rest situation, than any kind of shoulder something. Now, I would say that many of the players had either a piece of fabric or something thin or small or unobtrusive here. Most players had something, not nothing. But Paul played with nothing. He just had this. And he, played fine. The idea being that a rigid, solid shoulder rest, like a Kuhn or the better quality of those, locks a student into a position and doesn't allow the freedom of motion that Paul and his method is looking for. And I guess the reason I mention that is because for me, I had never really examined, the instrument came with a chin rest, that's what I use. I didn't think about, you can change those things out, you can adjust the height, bigger, taller, none. But again, his reference is, top is better to get better. It's better to live with a good chin rest than a bad shoulder rest, is the phrase they used. And then, what I've now used is, this is a poly pad. It does look like our gray ones that we get, but there's a little bit of a different shape to it, and it has a lot more support here. I've been really enjoying this. So it's not as rigid as your Kuhn shoulder rest or what have you. And it can flex a little bit, but it gives me that height and that support that makes holding the instrument feel good. Now those are pretty good, it's just that it just has that one extra angle of material underneath. And I think we can accomplish this with the stuff that we already use just by stacking up our green pads, maybe using a green pad in conjunction with a gray pad. My thought for the future, and this is like 5 years maybe down the road, but is that at every school, we have a few different varieties of these things. So that it's not just the chin rest that came with the instrument, but that we try to fit chin rest with kids' bodies. And maybe that's a dream in the sky, because it will take a lot of time. It will take some unscrewing and clamping and that kind of thing. There's just not a lot of time for that, at least in the classroom. But maybe you'll make, and know that this kid's like doing this, and they need a taller one, or this kid's it just has a really short neck space, and so maybe a smaller one or something like that. But that was emphasized so much in the Rolland workshop, is getting that right fit so you can have freedom of motion while you're playing. And they would do a lot of these kinds of things when they were doing the thing. So, any other ideas towards violin viola
Another
setup?
violin to get that freedom of holding it is playing this twinkle, and as the mosquito comes by, you slap the mosquito.
Oh, that's great.
And so that was a Suzuki thing.
So do they have to be playing the tune, or?
Well, no, maybe they were just
So
in position,
the student's in position.
and then the
teacher's
teacher
playing
would
the
be
tune.
zzz, the mosquito, yep. And so it's just a short time, but it gets.
Mhm. Yeah. I like doing Beethoven says touch your nose. Beethoven says touch your head. This is the big test really. Can you hold the instrument here and touch your right shoulder with your left hand? And I love saying that to kids for the first time because so many get confused. They're like, wait. Well, and let's take the instrument away. Why don't you just touch your right shoulder with your left without the instrument?
I'm sorry, with that mosquito thing, so the teacher plays the song and they're holding, or I couldn't
Well,
miss that
you know
one
what, it
spot.
might have been every time we played open A or open E on
Oh,
Twinkle,
yeah, that's a
there
good
was a
one.
mosquito.
Slap your knee. Slap your knee. Slap your knee. Something like that. Let's try it. So everybody's just gonna hold your position. I'll play Twinkle. Yeah?
Well, I think,
Oh.
well, I mean, I think at camp it was, everyone was
Oh, yes, we all play Twinkle. That's delightful. Yeah.
lots
That's
of
a good one.
variations of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just to make sure that you're flexible enough, and you have to return to position quickly. And hopefully it's practiced enough that it's back to good position too.
Sometimes for the dropping the left hand for violins and violas, I'll put a timer on the board and see how long can you hold your positions. And we'll have a little competition between the sections, maybe 401, can you do better than 404 did today or something? And then they can see the time as it passes by. We'll say, let's aim for 30. Hold up 30, if it's getting close, can you go longer?
I
Let's go
can do that
45.
with my candy drawer.
Yeah, so I just put a timer on and
That's why I have those wrapped fruit flavored lifesavers, and they balance one up there and have to count to 10, with no hands.
Oh, that's
And if it falls off, then they
don't get
start
it?
over.
So-
Well, then they start.
or in a perfect world, I could kind of come
But
give you a
there's
high
some kids who
five.
like to keep going, and they're like, oh, look at that, it's still going. You know,
So to
there's-
balance an object here,
On the other side.
on the other side.
Because there is the natural tilt.
Yes,
of
yes.
the
So you want
instrument,
to
so,
slide
yeah,
out
right there. So it's just
right
a little
there.
fruit lifesaver.
And this is so that the instrument isn't too
Mm-hmm.
this or this, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, then just hold it there.
And I have them count to
That's a good
10, once they're in position, count to 10, and then,
Mm-hmm. That's good.
they can eat. When can we play that again? Should we do lifesavers today?
The next activity I'll introduce is from Rolland. This is the shuttle idea. On Rolland's instruments for kids, he would place 3 dots, a second finger dot in first position, a middle harmonic dot, exactly in the middle of the string, and then an upper harmonic dot, the 1/3 node harmonic dot. And that was a visual that he would put in for kids for the shuttle game. So the shuttle game is this, and I think he always did call it a game so that it was more fun. But you explain it as the arm is shuttling the people, the fingers, from place to place. And as we come up to the horn, our thumb comes from the side of the neck down underneath it. And then as we go up to the upper positions, our elbow comes around the instrument so we can reach here. And I like to do it to music. Now I was gonna choose Baby Don't Go by Lightning Hopkins, and I don't have that track in there. I wanted to do it, but hey, we'll do something different. We'll do Like a Turkey Through the Corn. Long gone. So I'm going to do is about every 4 bars, we'll change and go to a different part. First position.
Long gone, like a turkey to the cold.
1, 2, shift to the middle.
Like a turkey to
Back
the
to first.
cold. Long
Back to the
gone,
middle.
with my long
Now
pajamas on.
we're trying low, mid, high. Low, 2, 3, 4.
Whoa, looking up.
Middle and 1, 2,
Whoa, I
3.
see
Upper now. 1.
that red-eyed captain now, boys, he's coming after
Back to
me. A
first.
long gone,
Middle.
like turkey to the
High.
long gone,
Middle.
like turkey to the
First. We'll do it a little faster. Here we go.
long gone.
Middle.
With
High.
my long pajamas on.
Middle. First. Middle. First. And you should be going around and guiding kids. Especially that higher one. And at this point I'm not carrying which string in particular. Just that we're shuttling the hand up and
Why do you
down.
know you couldn't meet? Just stay at home.
So yeah, my only concern is that we're just getting our hand moving in a good shape and we're able to reach as far. You know, some kids can reach all the way over on the G side of the fingerboard. For cello players and bass players, the C side of the E side. And it's not in particular that they get into any particular note, just that our arms are moving up from here and we have a good habit to the shapes. A student who plays cello or bass, this is the Margaret Rowell adaptation of this exercise, and is doing what's called knuckle knock, she called these. So just gently going up and down the string, not necessarily a violin one, but of course they're going to want to do it anyway, so just let them. And I do emphasize with cellos and bass players the wrist motion, and then seeing if they can bring it from the elbow, but never from the shoulder. I don't want to, gut punch in their instrument. This is the beginning of thumb position for cellos and basses. This is what this really is helpful for, building up that feeling. All right, now, that's step 1 in the shuttle. Not particularly caring about what note, not particularly caring about where you go, just that you're going from low, middle, high. The next step in the shuttle is to try harmonic explorations. So. I should practice this. So those would be the next steps that Rolland would ask students to try. In the Suzuki world, there's some tricks to add these into, like Twinkle Twinkle. So for example, on all the repeated notes in Twinkle Twinkle, you might try. Oh, sorry. Notes you can play our harmonic there. So let's try. Let's see. Actually, I think we could do this if a violin player could read a viola book, because there is a couple of these. Yeah. So these are school district books that were purchased, Lord knows how many years ago.
Thank you.
Oh, you gotta go. I understand. Thanks for staying for so long. I appreciate it coming.
What is that book for?
These are called New Tunes for Strings.
The hoedown that I use every concert.
Oh yeah. So let me pause the video. So one thread that ran through Rolland's coursework and this music by Stanley Fletcher is that there was always a easy way to participate on open strings for those beginning students. And then someone would play the advanced part while that was happening. So we have, who's going to be our advanced part players for the jig. But no one wants to try. I mean, I could try it. All right, I'll try to play the advanced part. Everybody else play the top line, okay? Number one, the jig, or jig.
I'll try to help you, but it might be really bad. We're not recording this.
All right? Yep. Oh, 1, 2, 1. So now you've got kids playing on open strings and they're having a blast. This could be, of course, pizzicato. It doesn't have to be with the bow if they're not ready for that. Could be left-hand pizzicato too, or right-hand pizzicato. Lots of ways to participate. And then, of course, as they get older, they've heard maybe the advanced version a whole bunch, and maybe they could join in the advanced version in their second year. All right, let's try Hoedown. This is the tuning tune.
Are they supposed to be at every school or not necessarily?
I believe every
I've never
seen
I
one.
have my personal collection, my personal.
Because I'm pretty sure they would have been purchased in conjunction with this book that I found at George McGovern/Axtell, which is the Rolland.
Never saw that way here.
Never
No?
seen it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this was just a unicorn that I had at my school.
Can I come from the district, when they used to have the district library?
Oh,
yeah.
Is this still in print? Like you can still buy this version or this
The Stanley Fletcher?
this one, the tune?
Yeah, the new tunes for strings.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could find a.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Cover might be different now.
it might be a little different or updated.
Schneezy. Okay.
Okay, so there's a signal from the piano.
Yep, that was violent.
Oh, so that goes. So you go back to part 2. Oh, okay, I see. And then violin. Violas, then. Oh, so we can choose smart. Oh, yeah, that's right. It is. It is. I'm sorry. Vibration too. So, and then you'll see how many instruments have stayed in tune, you know?
And we do this every year, and there's actually some YouTube videos with this, with large group orchestras playing this. And we always, of course, we're standing, and during that little piano solo thing, the first time we marched, and the second time we do a turn, but the cello and bass get to do a turn. And all fourth and fifth are playing it, and it just, and it's tradition, everyone, I mean, they hear it every year. So the students look forward to playing it, I think.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that you're playing all 4 strings. And that's one of the things that I feel I've been doing poorly with, is that we get stuck on just the 2 strings we play the tunes on, and we don't get to explore the other ones. Like, Mr. T, we haven't even seen the C string, or the E string for the bass.
So Leah, with this one, do you just pick a variation and so it always goes back to part 2? So if I do variation 1,
Right.
and then go to part
I
2.
always do part 2.
Variation
Yeah.
1, part 2.
Part 2 is always the same.
Okay, and then like next day you do variation 2,
So I suppose it's like verse 1, chorus, verse 2, chorus, instead of part 1, part 2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you can make up your own rhythms too, and yeah.
Cool.
And then also 5th grade, we do the slurs.
Okay. We'll keep the book on our stand and come back to it for some other purposes. The next thing is follow the teacher musical chairs fortnight. This is my notes for myself. This comes from Carol Tarr. So follow the teacher is, and this worked out really well on Zoom because you can mute the kids. So let me tell you about that first.
Andrew, did you want to hit record again or no? Are you good?
I believe I have.
Oh, you did.
Is it not?
No, I don't know.
Oh,
I just don't want it to get messed up.
I think it's on.
Oh,
We're good?
okay.
Yeah,
I
okay.
didn't know.
Appreciate it. Wouldn't want to miss it, especially for our the teachers that may need it. Okay. Right. So what was I saying? Oh yeah. Okay. So it's worked out really well on Zoom, and I'm looking forward to trying it in person. But the idea was a Zoom group class, and the teacher starts playing the rep the kids are working on. And okay, everybody mute and follow me. So kids are playing, and of course, because it's Zoom, you can't hear them because they're muted. And then the teacher starts playing other rep, just switching between the rep, and then going to just super pro rep, like playing a concerto or something, and asking the kids to follow along. Now you can't hear the kids again, so no problem, but they'll start following along and doing the things that the teacher does. And it's not important that they're playing it right or well, but they are starting to try to do that, and what you're doing is breaking through that barrier of fear, but you're also getting them into parts of the instrument that they haven't got to because the repertoire is so easy. So in person, the teacher plays something and you might go, I'm just going to think da 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 da, big ship, and you have a kid try da 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 da, blah blah. Doesn't matter, and it's funny. But now they're getting up and out of first position and trying something new in another place. Or let's play a variation of this might be let's play all the notes on the string. You just play every note, and it's a fun thing to do. So follow the teacher. How did I say musical chairs? Trying to figure out what I
Sounds
said.
like a cow mooing.
Okay, so that's the beginning. Now here's the real conceit. The teacher will stop suddenly at some point. This is part of the game. So it's going to be some sort of piece or activity where you're going. So maybe a change to the D string, back to the A. Let's make it simple. Change to the D string. All right, you're all out. Let's try again. Join me. Okay, you're out. Continue. Join me. And so on until you have one person left.
So you call that one? I like it.
See, it's sort of like musical chairs, or it's sort of like Fortnite, because Fortnite is a battle royale, whereas one person's standing at the end. So that's really what musical chairs is, and vice versa. Maybe I'll take
It gets them to definitely watch because they get
Yeah.
to, I don't know, distracted looking at something else. They're watching you.
it. Yeah.
I like it.
Or playing any of our pieces in unison together, and telling the kids that this is the game. We're going to play this piece that we play really well. Watch out for me to stop. And yes, they do have to listen and pay closer attention then. It's great activity to throw in there. We should probably come up with a better name, actually. I have a little funny note here to introduce children to the Highlander scenario and the superiority of the music of Queen. But that's it. Highlander, the movie. Queen was the soundtrack. No? Highlander, there can be only one.
There can be only one.
Yeah, okay, well, moving on. Not everybody's fan, it's all right. Okay, all right, introducing the bow. I know we've been playing all along, but let's assume that we haven't introduced the bow yet. In Rolland, they used a pencil and dowel preparation to introduce the bow. So of course a small manipulable that's easy to hold and doesn't weigh very much to introduce the shape of everything. I think we're all pretty familiar with that. And then a dowel, I like having several different lengths of dowels because the shorter ones are light and then the longer ones start to approach the shape of the bow and of course are much cheaper than a bow if you like to start with those. So, but the Rolland folk like to start at the balance point of the bow and shaping the shape of the bow. And I think we've talked enough today about shaping the shape of the bow. Some folks like to use the llama approach and bring that there, and I like to do that too. I just like having a lot of different ways to do it. So if I see that the llama's not working for this kid, I'll do this approach, where I'll pull the stick along their fingers to get that sensory feeling, and see if we can get those fingers to set before we can see placing the thumb. So I call it the upside down approach to setting up the bow. Now, I'm all in favor of starting wherever you like. The Rolland balance point doesn't last long. It's because it's easier to hold and manipulate the bow and it feels lighter. That's the purpose of this. We want to get down to the frog as soon as possible though. So they'll start doing some of the basic things like stir the pot and windshield wipers and waves, and then holding the bow with two hands and releasing any static tension by simply moving the fingers and placing the fingers to where we want it. And then over time, trying the same activities further down the bow, windshield wipers, and then finally getting to the pro location. I'm also of the Suzuki mind of trying the thumb on the bottom if a student's finding it very difficult to get the thumb in the right place. The reason I like the thumb on the bottom is that it makes that round shape if you're looking for the mouse house, the panda pit, the butterfly, whatever manipulatives you can, right? So you get a little mouse finger puppet or a little panda, and you inspect the,
Oh my God, that's adorable.
sixth graders, seventh graders, eighth graders may not like this. It's a little too silly, but inspect the sides. They're like, oh, I can't get in. When they have that crushed thumb.
That's what.
Or this guy's cute, this little butterfly. Okay. Now, one thing we got into a little bit with Jason was talking about how, once we've gotten you here, great, we've got this great bow hold. A lot of these exercises are very easy when the bow is vertical. And then if you want to increase the challenge, change it to 45 degrees. Now the bow seems heavier, but not this yet. Save this for when they really develop their muscles. So the same things, waves and windshield wipers and stirring the pot, see if they can do it at this angle. And then, say the second or third week, then we're here holding the bow here, because like Jason mentioned, there's no situation where the bow is like this when we play, except for very short when we're in the air or something. The string is holding up most of the weight of the bow. So that's why bringing the left hand to the bow party when we're practicing bow holds to take the weight out of it, so it makes shaping it easier for the kid. Shaping the fingers can be much harder if you're also trying to hold up the weight of this thing, even though it's 38 grams, whatever it is, for the weight of the bow.
And Marjorie also uses, do you still use the smoothie straws
Oh, yeah, yeah.
for the beginning bow? Because they're
Yes.
wired.
Instead of a dowel, the big thick straws, and the idea being there, if I'm right, is that if you press too hard, it'll bend and crush.
Squish it.
Right? Toilet paper tubes, same thing. Different size dowels I didn't talk about, but bigger dowels for some kids can be more helpful for them because it's a bigger surface area to grab onto. Toilet paper tubes, if the kids can get over their squeamishness with that. I used to collect those, but it's just such a hassle. But I will mention that Rolland was big on using tubes of some kind to help direct the angle of motion of the bow. And that it wasn't quite like a bazooka here on the shoulder, because you know it's really at an angle across your chest when you play with the bow and the violin and viola. And then cellos would hold a zoot, they call it a zoot tube or something like that.
I think our book calls it hoo-hoo.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Not okay. That is
Yeah.
not
a
gonna
little weird.
stop the giggles. That is the opposite. So anyhow, the tube here for cellos and basses to help guide things. And honestly, all of those things, none of those things, some of them, some not others. Use what works, and don't worry about what doesn't. But that can be another helpful tool in guiding the bow. Okay, back to Suzuki. Up like a rocket. I have heard this to a scale, but most traditionally it's to Twinkle Twinkle. Up like a rocket, down like the rain, back and forth like a choo-choo train. I might have different words, sorry. Round and round like the kettle drum, round and round like the great big sun. Up like a rocket, down like the rain, all fingers bending just the same. And I hold out, for that last part, I hold out my hand so the kids can rest the weight of the frog here and we can release any static tension from the fingers. And just tap the fingers here.
And I have different words too.
Yes, and especially at the end.
Out on our palm, bend pinky curve thumb.
And pinky curve thumb, I
Yeah.
like that too.
I think somebody put it on the shared drive.
Yeah, I might have.
Yeah, there's one
And
where
we
it's
do-
like put it on your head just for fun, but that's a little bit of a stretch for someone.
Yeah.
Especially if they're holding it at the balance point, then their arm is like right there.
All right,
We
we're
also
gonna-
do that for concerts. The first concert.
all right, I'm excited for the next part. We're gonna take Up Like a Rocket and we're gonna put it into our play order. So Up Like a Rocket, it's gonna be one person's play order. Down Like the Rain will be the next person's, okay? We're gonna pass it around. So play order, let's remind ourselves. Marjorie,
Yeah, me, who was after Tammy?
Chrissy was.
you
Who
said
was after
Chrissy.
Chrissy?
Victor.
Victor, I'll say Victor, okay.
Okay.
Okay, Victor, let's just practice right now. Who's your
And then
person?
who were you saying before?
Katie.
Ashton.
And then Leah.
Denise.
Okay, ready? Up like a rocket,
Down like what, the rain?
down like the rain.
Okay.
Back and forth.
Back and forth.
Round and round like a big old sun. There's
It's
some
okay.
words.
That's
Then my words are put it on your head just for fun.
Round and round like a kettle drum. And then
And
it's
then
Round
the
and round
reprises.
like a-
Up like a rocket.
Down like the rain.
Oh, it's my turn.
Yeah.
All fingers bending just the same. All right, now, change places in the room. Same order. Need a D. Up like a rocket.
Down like the rain. Round and round like a big old sun.
Then what's the next word?
Round and round like a kettle drum. I do kettle drum first, then sun, but I
Round
don't
and
do
round like a kettle drum.
Up like a rocket, down like the rain.
All fingers,
All fingers bent.
all fingers bending just the same. Okay.
Lots of different words. I know the different words are.
The kids love to sing it too.
So that was a combination of the play order where you use the same play order, but you change positions. So now you really need to remember your person, and you can't rely on your physical place in the room. Also, it gets kids mixed up, so they have to look in different places, and it gets them out of their chairs.
By the way, those of you that were asking about Kagan strategies, that sounds just like a Kagan strategy. Yes.
Oh, cool! It's a
That
three-fer.
would fit right on in.
Yeah.
Teamwork.
Okay. I think I have a few more. Let me just look ahead because I'm very excited about the play order and all the other things it can do for you. One thing I skipped in the play order is one thing you'll notice right away is the students don't look at each other as they pass from one person to another. So I practice. Now I want you to look at the person. You know, up like a rocket.
Down the rain.
And then if they look, that's good. And I say, okay, now I want you to give them a friendly face. Smile at them. Up like a rocket, you know. And how does that change what we're doing, right? Another extension of that activity is to do it with eyes closed. So you pass the melody, eyes closed. So tell you what, why don't we just forget the words? Let's just, let's pick up our instruments. Let's try the same play order, but this time Twinkle Twinkle, key of D. And let's do 2 measures. Da 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 da. Next person. Da 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 da. Next person. Da 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 da. Okay. All right. So play order. Let's do eyes open first time, and then we'll try eyes closed second time. Ready and make it fast. And everybody else sort of airbow or just follow along. Imagine doing the eyes closed in combination with changing your position in the room. Now you've really got some challenges going on. So I think the play order is just such a neat idea for helping.
Do you keep the play order like all semester, all quarter, or just the
Just
day?
for the day.
Just the day, okay.
Just for the day. So next time it'll be a different play order. You know?
Okay.
And I think that's important because you don't want to always be the last person. You know, it's not a great position to be in, or always the first person can be tempted. Everybody, I want you to, let's make a circle of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to make a circle of 6 chairs. And we'll just need our bows. So it's like musical chairs. But in order to keep your seat, you not only have to sit in your seat, you have to have a perfect bow hold. So you're going to have to pick up the bow first, make your perfect bow hold, and sit down. You can't sit on the bow. That doesn't count. Right?
Now, does it have to be a perfect, if it's a telebow, does it have to be a perfect telebow hold?
Yeah. So like, here's where you need to use your judgment. You know, is it the perfect shade? Are we going to be a stickbow better? You know, did they do caveman? So there's got to be perfect bow hold. Ready?
Okay. Yeah. Clockwise.
Whoops, we forgot to
Forgot
take
the
that one
sitting down part.
there. So we don't have to keep doing this. You guys get the idea. Right? You take away one chair and so on and so on.
Okay.
But a fun way to make sure everybody's learning their bow hold quick. At the end, everybody hold your bow in the center and take a photograph. So it's 3 musketeers. Not today. Just when you do this, so there's no one's feeling bad. All for one, one for all. And it also makes a cool photo. Teacher stands on a chair, takes a picture down, and all the kids are still friends, even if one person won.
I did this last year. All right, everybody, come on in. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I did it once, and they were like,
Did you huddle before a concert?
Well, it was no, it was during a large group lesson. I'm
You
like, all
say
right.
all for one, one
Well,
for
I
all.
said,
That's what you say?
I said something on my counts. Everybody say, I'll say, let's go, and you say orchestra, let's go. But they were like, orchestra. I think they were just done. I tried. It was probably right before recess or something, and that was probably.
And with all these games and activities, is it like 5 to 9 miles per day?
Oh,
with
yeah.
your steps.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Elementary.
Those things. One thing I didn't talk about is the spider crawl up the stick. And I have modified this, especially in the beginning, to only go halfway up the stick.
Oh, I love that.
Some kids like to really go for it, and I say, not the first day. The Rolland folks especially emphasized that the shape of the hand should not really be deformed in crawling down. That you want to maintain this thing and try not to do crazy, weird things with the fingers. So that's why
I feel like
again,
it's a lot easier for violin and viola because the pinky's on top. I always
Yeah.
find it super hard for cello and bass. I don't know if it's just because I'm a violin player, but I find it way harder
so
on cello and
even,
bass bow going back this way, back down.
oh yeah, I agree.
It's
Um,
way harder.
Even some of the pros, the pinky will come up on a cello player's bow. Occasionally we'll play.
I want to do that.
And it's just so it's a natural thing. It's okay, I think. We don't encourage cello players to do that, but if it
What
happens,
happens if you? I have short pinkies.
Hmm.
Like, and I can't. Like, I'm like double jointed or something. And it always does this weird thing, and kids are like, "Is that okay?" I'm like, I don't know, but that's not pinky.
I think you need to have a lot of room to accommodate the different shapes and lengths of fingers, and I
Okay.
think that's okay.
Like even for my own.
As long as, the enemy is static tension. As long as we have flexibility and the ability to play the music on the page, then I think as long as it sounds good and feels good, who cares what it looks like? Right? As long as you're not creating a tension problem where you're creating
But this
some
feels
other problem.
fine, right?
yeah.
This is super relaxed
Oh.
for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
This works.
Salt shaker. So put your bow somewhere safe. The salt shaker in the right hand. So you got a salt shaker and you're just going to town. You got a brisket there. You're getting it all seasoned up. Now I want you to watch the forearm and the upper arm. This is sort of a happy cat motion. If you've seen the happy cat at some Chinese American restaurants. But Rolland noticed that when the bows change, the lower arm and the upper arm sort of work in opposite directions from each other. And the salt shake motion puts that in. As the upper arm is rising, the lower arm is falling in this motion. And the salt shaker motion can be very helpful with getting this bow arm motion to happen, the action. Also helpful for doing like you're salting yourself in the face, your vibrato motion, like a salt shaker. And if that doesn't work for you, the egg shaker that you can get at Guitar
Tic-tacs.
Center.
Tic-tacs.
Tic-tacs. Tic-tacs works well too. Yeah, parts of the bow song is very similar, just, well, what is this? This is the screw. What is this? This is the leather. What is this? This is the stick. What is this? Ow. This is the point. What is this? Don't touch the horse hair. Yeah. One of those deals. But just lifting and placing the bow. So first of all, we're just going straight up and down off the string. Lifting and placing the bow and allowing some weight to sink into the string. Lifting and placing and landing on a different string. Lifting and placing and landing on a different place in the bow. So I do like to use tapes for the bow. I use red for the middle, blue for the balance point, B, blue, balance, same thing. And then the white is just a halfway point between the blue and the red. Rolland would have a tape in the lower half and the upper half and roughly divide the bows into thirds, where the bottom third would be the balance point and the upper third would be kind of here. Or no tapes at all, whatever works for you. But being able to lift and place the bow at different places, and again, this is the arm above the head, engaging the trapezius muscle, and then coming down for a silent landing is also part of what this activity would be. And they would do it at different parts of the bow. So do it at the tip of the bow. And then you tell your students to start exploring. I mean, there's no reason they have to do exactly what you're doing for this activity, but being able to allow the bow arm to engage, remove itself from the string and come back. The emphasis is very much silent. They would call the free part of this activity free wandering. Just freely, even walk around the room. This is very the hippie flower child part of the class. Suzuki rhythms. Rolland definitely has a synergy here where both Suzuki and Rolland said the smaller, shorter bow rhythms are easier to execute than asking a student, say, to play a whole note. And there's a lot going on there, from how the bow transitions and changes, how the weight distribution changes, how the fingers need to change and flex, how the wrist needs to bend in such a way so the bow is straight. So his thing was, we're just going to worry about lower arm hinge mostly. If the shoulder engages fine, I'm not going to dissuade it. Cello bass, similar idea. It's mostly lower part of the arm, but you are going to see more swing in the bass world from the shoulder, and the cello a little bit more too. So anyway, he would start off with simple rhythms. So let's just go through the Suzuki rhythms there at the beginning of the Suzuki method. Starts off with 4/16, 2/8. Y'all pretty much translated what I was thinking there. Your low two strings, your top two strings. It doesn't matter that we are or are not playing the same two strings, just that we're working on the rhythm. And then, of course, flipping the rhythms and coming up with other rhythms that you may need. He was very into introducing interesting rhythms right away to the students, so that it wasn't, just like in the beginning of our orchestra expression books, it's all quarter notes and quarter rests, and kids can do more. And I think it's fun to try, even if you, by ear. It's not necessarily as important to see it on the page. Although Rolland would introduce these complicated rhythms, and they would just put one measure of a complicated rhythm on display for the students. And before long, having seen them as one measure at a time, they would start to see them in repertoire. And then they'd already had familiarity with those things, and they didn't know they were hard. And the kids in these videos started to play what seems like hard stuff at first.
So like the Bach double starts goody goody stop stop, and Goldberg suite Jackrabbit. Yep, and the Holberg suite. Jackrabbit eats carrot.
Yeah.
So all these rhythms are in the classic music. Like,
Yeah, classic works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think one thing that our orchestra expressions materials, but our curriculum lacks is a stronger rhythmic approach, and we all have to put a lot more structured rhythmic approach to what we do. Okay, yes,
Can I add something?
please.
Since you were talking about like bow stroke, long and short earlier, and then how it relates to your arm movement. Like this is like just an article I saw earlier that talked about like when teaching like beginners. It says this kind of not really discouraged, but they point out that playing in the middle of the bow is actually maybe harder for kids, because in the middle of the bow it involves like your forearm motion and also your shoulder and your upper arm.
Yeah.
So it actually might be easier just to isolate, just maybe play the tip.
Middle to upper
So
half.
you're only focusing on the forearm motion,
Yeah.
or the bottom and your whole arm instead of like using it a lot of play in the middle. So it's harder for a lot of kids to coordinate both motion at the same time.
Yeah.
If you do the tip or just the frog, then you're just doing one instead of both.
I'm really glad you pointed that out. When I say middle, I do mean middle to upper half, rather than lower at the balance point. But
where your elbow makes a right angle and then you bow from there.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So that it's this right angle hinge that's doing the work. rather than that multi-hand coordination.
That would really get them to use the tip of the bow. Sometimes they don't like to use the whole bow. And at least in that, if you go halvesies, then they use the upper half and then the lower half, and then putting it all together doesn't really feel so funny. So.
And have you seen those YouTube videos an orchestra director put out? This is more like probably 5th or 6th grade stuff. It's popular tunes that are school appropriate, but then on the smart board it says 4 beats, and then they would, they're in on open string notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they do 8 beats in a bow, or 2 beats, or 1. But they're to current popular tunes, and she has a whole list of YouTube videos. But that's more 5th, 6th, when they're using the whole bow, and it's at her bow warm-up.
We'll get into something similar, some subject ideas, and some other ideas from Suzuki teachers. Let's play Allegro next. Allegro from Suzuki, book 1. Let's start in the key of D.
Yeah.
So it starts on.
I can play the bass if you want to do the cello on this.
I could do cello a lot easier, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a bit of a chore on the
I
bass,
have
isn't
my
it?
own bass version that I wrote for the basis,
So
so I'll play that version.
the words
Even
for
on a
this.
tiny cello.
The words for this come from Pam Davenport, I think, and she's a cello Suzuki teacher. It is. I'll just sing it while we play it. Ready? Popcorn is the name of it. Popcorn, popcorn, listen to the popcorn, 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 listen to the pop. Popcorn, popcorn, listen to the popcorn, 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 listen to the pop. Silent bow circle, make them wait. Also a great tune for play order and stuff. Strengthening the fingers is an exercise that can happen with the instrument, of course, by playing it, but also away from the instrument. We have flexors and extensors in our hands. And I'll tell the children that. These are your flexors. These are your extensors. So let's make some eyeglasses with our fingers. And then let's do it with middle fingers. And let's do it with ring fingers. And let's do it with pinky fingers. And then some of your children may be like me, and I can't do this. Like, this is the best I got. And it feels weird. Okay? Do it on first creases. Now you've got smaller little circles here, and so on. You get the idea with that one. It gets the fingers flexible and moving there. Popcorn fingers. Popcorn, popcorn. What's the words? Listen to the popcorn pop. So these would be the flicks. These are working your extensors. And then try the other way. Popcorn, popcorn. Listen to the popcorn, popcorn, popcorn. Listen to it pop, or any other tune that works for you. Great way to work on those fingers. And they also had a bouncy ball finger roll, passing a ball to each other so that you have that that rebound to the catch, but you're also passing across the floor, and that natural motion can help working on freedom of motion and swinging. On the instrument, plucks and flicks as well, left hand especially, to build left hand strength. So wherever it's easy, because here a first finger is a little harder to pluck. So I usually move it to the midpoint. Middle finger, just going through each finger. Each string, plucks and flicks. And so on. You can also combine it with the shuttle game. So you pluck first position, pluck mid position, pluck high position, or across the strings, pluck E string, A string, D string, G string. And you can make quite the game with the shuttle and the pizzicato all at the same time. So you're also practicing that free arm motion with it. while you strengthen the fingers. Another follow-up activity, this is to be off the instrument, that they emphasize for left hand, not just placement, but strength. And you can do this as a partner game. It'd be the easiest to do because you don't want to go around to 25 kids in your class and take up all your time doing that. But you just have a little conversation about babies and how babies' fingers cling just naturally. And so you're going to do this right now. You're going to put, so teacher or partner puts the child's fingers underneath, and you pretend like you're clinging onto mama or the tree branch or whatever you want to put it as. But you're giving resistance to the kids so that they sink against you. And now what you're training in to their playing is weighted at the string. A kid can do this by themselves. Everybody take out your pencil, hold it on your shoulder, I suppose. But I think it's a lot more fun with a partner. And, play with them, push their hand up so high that, oh, I can't, they'll really try to pull you down. I think that resistance is a good training for finger strength. I'm forward to seeing how this plays out with the kids this year. All right, the hardest one for me is this next one called chorus line fingers. So it starts here without the instrument, and it's to the tune of Can Can. And she recommended that Can Can be slowed down to 75%, because like a full speed Can Can's a little too quick. So I'll show you like this, but a student would do it with the palm facing their nose. So it's index, so dum dum da dee 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 dee. This is the hardest part for me. Is making my ring finger go between my middle and my pinky, and then middle finger between ring and first, and then thumb opening and closing. All right. So once again, the order is first finger opening, closing, pinky finger opening, closing, ring finger between pinky middle between ring index, and then thumb opening and closing. And then shake it off, get rid of any static tension, right? So it's really fun when you do it with Can Can, because you got the music and it's exciting. Step 2 is to try it with fingers curled. So, dum, dum, da dee dee, switch, dum, dum, da dee, da, switch, dum. I can't do that one very well, it's very challenging. Done. So that's step 2, fingers curled. That's usually harder, right? Because we've got a bit more dynamic tension being built into our fingers at this point. Next step, instrument up. Fingers straight up and down. If you'd like to join me, go ahead. If you don't want to, it's fine. Dum dum da dee dee dum 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 da da da. I'm actually inclined to remove my wedding ring for this. Da dee dee da da dee 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 dum dum. Actually, I think that thumb part is not part of it. So it's just first finger, pinky finger, then ring finger, then middle finger. That's the sequence. Last step. Dum dum. No, not the last step. This is the second to last step. Curled fingers with the instrument in place. So same series. And then the last step is fingers in place on the string. Can you move that first finger back and forth, pinky finger, ring finger, with the fingers touching the string lightly? This might be a really good idea for putting a Kleenex on the fingerboard to assist with sliding. And that is called the chorus line fingers for developing finger independence. Now this would definitely be a later in the year activity for fingers. You need to develop strength and coordination before, this is not a first semester activity. Cello salute also teaches a bass player how to hold their bass hand. I like to do this glasses off for me. So you take your bow hand, your instrument hand, index finger on the eyebrow, middle finger nose, ring finger lips, pinky finger chin, and then thumb and middle finger. Now you've got the bass shape. You've also got a back extension for a cello player. So cello salute. And make a game with your cello players. If I see you in the hall, I better see a cello salute. And I heard a hilarious story where Pam Davenport, who can seem like a very stern person, but is a very heartwarming person, had told her cello players at the Institute that if I see you in the hall, you have to give me the salute. And many of the cello players will have their cello and their chair and their music bag. And so apparently this young, like 7-year-old kid, it's like didn't know what to do. He can't drop stuff. I can't do it. You know, it's okay. You can show me in class next time. Okay.
The cello salute.
There you go.
The cello salute. Yep. And it really, the most critical is that eyebrow to nose. That's what creates the big space between first and second finger for an extension. And not necessarily something we'll get into in elementary school, but it's not bad to get that. I cannot remember the cello player I saw to do this. So, back extensions for a cello player. Index finger. Inch your way up the stick of the bow. The nice thing about this is you can see what you're doing. And you've sort of got a number of times that you get to practice it. Now, forward extension coming down the bow. In this order, and very particularly in this order, thumb, 2, 3, 4, gravity, touch, relax. So thumb is always first in a cello player's extension. Gravity makes this a more natural activity for the hand, action for the hand. And then after a while, you'll start to sequence that kind of fast. And you can work on your forward extensions. One of the most common habits for a cello player's extension is that the thumb doesn't go with the middle finger, and they find that stretch isn't very big. And you say, well, let me just move your thumb. And you put it under the hand, and they're like, you can do an extension, and it's relaxed, you know, you've been there. Yeah. He would say, who's the boss? And it was a position test. So we'd have students come over with their instrument, and he would be seated, and you know, the child's this size, and so the instrument's here. And he would grab onto the scroll, and he'd tug it gently, and move the student around. And then and he would do some small readjustments right there. Like, oh, get your head like this, and you do this. But he would pull this way to make sure they were balanced on their feet. So I like to push students or pull them. I always ask permission, of course. I say, I'm gonna come up and push you on your shoulders. And I'll lean to the side of an elbow, or maybe even a hip. But I'll push them and see if they can maintain their balance. And this is, of course, important for cello players because we should be balancing our weight on our legs as well as our high knee, or a violin player sitting down. But pushing on their body without the instrument, or pushing on their body with the instrument, making sure that this is stable here. Who's the boss is that one. That's for Rolland and Suzuki. For a cello player, bass player sitting down, you can push on their fingerboard. Is it going into the chest, or is it away from the chest? And you push on it, and it has this motion change. You want it to be connected here. You don't want it to be off this way or in the air. Opposite of that, sometimes telling kids what they're doing wrong is not helpful. So you might try something called Fix the Teacher, where the teacher sits down and has terrible posture position. Let's pretend I'm a violin player. And so I do this, and you say, okay, Johnny, Susie, come on up, fix something. Tap it with your magic wand if you don't want them touching you. Just tap with your bow or something. So, Ms. Bow, could you fix something? I'm in rather a lot of pain. Oh, okay, did I fix it? Always check in with the student, and they'll be the first to tell you, oh no, you're terrible. Let's change that. And so eventually this happened. You get back to here, and sometimes it can prevent the need to tell the student what they're doing wrong. They sort of figure it out by watching you fix yourself, especially because you're the person in the hot seat, so to speak.
After playing that game with
Yeah.
the teacher, then we do little groups of 2 or 3, the orchestra doctors.
Oh yeah, orchestra doctors, yeah, I like that too.
But they give their own feedback once
Once you've
Yeah,
seen it
that's-
enough times
yeah.
that you can trust a small group too.
yeah.
That's a great idea too, because then you have some independence and then you can step back and watch the whole thing. Let's do rock and roll. We'll need your instrument and a bow. Yeah, okay. So the first step of this, for a cello player, you just hook it with your left hand, or a bass player like this. For a violin player, thumb to the horn, pinky finger hooks the tip of the bow. So you have this pivot point at the tip of the bow with your pinky finger sitting still. So what we're going to do is rock, and then roll. And I'm still not convinced that I like the words rock and roll to these motions, but that's what they call them. So I'm just gonna keep saying it the way they said it. So rock, and then roll. Now, place it on the skinny string. And rock, and yeah, and you probably need to tell your students this is a silent exercise. And then pick a string level and roll. And you're gonna have a little bit of that. That's fine. Try it in the middle. Rock and roll. All points in the bow, balance point, middle, upper half, lower half. So another variation of this, and it's especially to develop some of the other joints and muscles, is for the teacher or another person to hold and isolate parts of the student's bow arm and get them to move, say, just the wrist, and start developing that finger and wrist independence so that you're building a collab in the student's hand. As a cello player, this is really easy to do by just pressing your forearm to the upper corners bend here, and then you can isolate your fingers on the instrument. For violin and viola though, you're going to need to either hold your own arm or hold the student's arm for you.